Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k Necron. So we've got something a little bit different for you today, something a little bit more informative. We're not doing a review today. This time we're going to be going through the secondary objectives from the Leviathan, can't even get my words right, from the Leviathan box set. So we're going to go through, in fact it's these cards right here, they came from that box, the Leviathan box. And you've probably seen from this image in fact what they actually look like if you were to purchase them separately. Now it's going to come with 16 secondary objectives, although 7 of them I believe are fixed and 9 of them are tactical. There is a difference between the two. If you are playing fixed then you will be selecting 2 pre-game, and that will be coming under, let me have a little check. After you've determined the attacker and defender, you then go on to step number 7, which is select secondary missions. So before you've actually declared your battle formations, your leaders, your transports, as well as your strategic reserves, you're going to be doing your secondary objectives. So if you are playing fixed, you're going to be selecting 2 of them, and they're going to be continuous throughout the game, so you're going to be scoring them every single battle round. Whereas if you're playing tactical, you're still going to select 2 in this step, in step number 7, but then in every command phase, you are going to be not replenishing, but you're going to be getting new ones until you've actually got 2 secondary objectives that are available to you. If you've already got 2, you can't be drawing anymore unless there's some specific rule that allows you to. Now there is an option of actually burning one of the secondary objectives for 1 command point, which is called New Orders. You can do that, quite pricey, and you can only do that once per battle in fact. And at the end of your turn, you can burn another one or a secondary objective, and you actually gain a CP rather than lose a CP, but you're doing it at the end of the turn, so therefore you're not actually scoring it. So you're really only going to use that for when you've got something that you really can't do. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to go through the tactical ones, we're then going to go through the fixed ones, and we're going to talk about how best to score them with Necrons. Because a lot of people are asking me, I'm not sure how to score with this, with that, with this secondary objective, with that secondary objective. So we're going to go through that today, and hopefully I can give you some information of how to actually score. So this is the list of all the objectives. The tactical are on the left in orange, and the fixed are on the right in green. I've put them in alphabetical order for reference basically, and there will be timestamps at the bottom of the page as well, at the bottom of the video, so you will be able to actually see and come back to the video if needed. So the first one to begin is a tempting target. So I'm going to display the actual card on the screen for you. Took a bit of time cutting these out, but here they are. So when you've drawn this card, your opponent must select 1 objective marker in the no man's land. Then at the end of your turn, if you can control that objective marker, you score 5 victory points. Now that is not a fixed one, that is a tactical one. I'll get onto what is fixed later on down the line. So this one is going to be fairly difficult because first of all your opponent gets to select which one it is, and it's not going to be anywhere near your objective. It's not going to be anywhere near your deployment zone rather. It's going to be very well guarded by your opponent. There are a few ways of actually doing a tempting target. Now I'm not suggesting that these are in any particular order. I've just sort of come up with some solutions, going by my playstyle. So if you've got anything different to add, put it in the comments down below. So I'm going to start with the Scorpet Destroyers. I'm not really that keen on them this edition, but because they've got a movement of 7 inches and objective control 2, they could potentially be storming an objective, getting onto that tempting target, getting into a fight after they've made their charge move, or their movement, their charge move, fought a few models off, and hopefully their objective control 2 with maybe a unit of 6 of them, maybe with a Scorpet Lord on top of that, you could potentially take away that objective. Another way of doing it is by using Tomb Blades, which are pretty rapid. They're not as quick as 9th edition, but they've still got 12 inches of movement. You can give them the assault keyword with the Tesla weapons to give them, they can advance and still shoot, which is nice. They've also got objective control 2. Now they're not necessarily wanting to get into a fight, but because now they've got an invulnerable save for free, well it's basically for free now, you could potentially shoot and then make the charge move, take away a few more models. It is risky because you could lose models as well, but it may get you that objective. A better solution though would be something else that's rapid but can also fight, such as the Canoptic Wraiths with their vicious claws or their whip coils. They can actually get into a fight and actually they can take out some models and take some beating at the same time. They're moving 9 inches, not as quick, but they've got objective control 2 as well, very similar to the Scorpet Destroyers. Other alternatives, we've got Praetorians, they've got the deep strike ability. You've also got Ophidian Destroyers, which have also got Deep Strike, but they can be using their ability Tunneling Horrors, so every single turn you could be popping in 9 inches away, potentially just straight onto an objective, not very likely because your opponent has chose it, but you can maybe make that charge move, again, get into that fight, remove some models, and maybe take that objective. I quite like the idea of a Catan charge, the Transcendent Catan. You can't use the advanced ability and then charge, unfortunately, but he also does have Deep Strike, so he could do it that way, and this thing does pack a good punch. One last option for you for attempting target would be just a Veil of Darkness. Now I've just showed in the image here an Overlord with some Lich Guard. You can put it on any leader that isn't an epic hero that is leading a unit. It doesn't even have to be leading a unit really, but ideally you want him to be, because you need the objective control to gain the objective. So for this example, I've got an Overlord with some Lich Guard with the shields. Maybe better with the War Scythes to be removing models, but you've got the options there. So that is attempting target. The next one I'm going to talk about is area denial. So area denial, at the end of your turn, if one or more units from your army, not including Battle Shock unfortunately, if they're wholly within 6 inches of the centre of the battlefield, and there are no enemy units wholly within 6 inches of the centre of the battlefield, you score 5 victory points. Now there is an alternative way of scoring with this. If you've got no enemy units within 3 inches, you can then instead get 3 victory points instead of 5, but really you want to max out here, you need the 5. So what are the best ways to do this? What are the best units to use? The first one I want to talk about is the flayed ones. Now I'm just going by the logic of if you're deploying them on this objective, or the centre of the battlefield should we say, with the Infiltrator's ability, maybe you pull this card, well in fact you get to select, don't you? So maybe you select this turn 1. So if you've selected this turn 1 and you infiltrate a unit of flayed ones, maybe a couple of units of flayed ones, whatever you want really, you could be screening off the centre of the battlefield whilst they're not going to necessarily be within 6, but you can get another unit to just get in there with, again, it could be Tomb Blades, it could be, well in fact it would really be Tomb Blades because they've got the Scout 9-inch ability, so they can move 9, then they're moving 12, they can advance, they're quite easily going to get to the centre of the battlefield if you really wanted to. Now of course that does rely on going first as well. If you don't go first, then potentially the flayed ones are going to die, and it's a waste of 70 points. But you do have other options, like I said, you've got the Tomb Blades, you've also got Lich Guard. If you can get Lich Guard there mid-game, they're going to be clumped up within 6 inches of the centre of the battlefield, and they're pretty resilient, so they're not going to go anywhere. It's just blocking off enemy units to get within 6 inches. Now a unit I wouldn't use with this secondary is Necron warriors in groups of 20. I'm not sure if they can actually fit, I've not measured it, but it will be quite difficult, especially if there's terrain features in and amongst the way. You've then got your characters, your crypto thralls. It's going to be a tight squeeze, but you could potentially do it, and you could even use a Ghost Arc perhaps to actually block the way. Other options that you could use is the Canoptic Scab Swarms that not only just block the way for enemy units, but also just do the actual area denial. They can be the unit that's within 6 inches. They're so small and so easy to hide. If there's a terrain feature there, great. They can hide in there and they're not going to get killed. But realistically, you're not really going to, maybe it could be Overwatch, something like that. You're not really going to die on your turn, but Overwatch could be something. One last option I've got for you is the big chunky Necron Monolith. Now this thing has got 160mm base, or 6.25 inches in terms of the base. So it covers up the majority of what you need to cover up. It doesn't quite cover it all up, but if you push this thing slightly forward, your opponent has to stay 1 inch away unless they're charging. In fact, they're not charging. What am I talking about? Unless they heroically intervene potentially. But they've got to wholly be within 6 inches of the centre. So they're not likely getting in, realistically. They're not getting in with this big thing in the way. So that's another method of doing that if you can get the monolith in that spot. The next one we've got is Capture Enemy Outpost. Now this one goes under the radar because it's actually worth 8 victory points. It's quite a nice chunk of points if you can pull it off. So at the end of your turn, if you control one or more objective markers in your opponent's deployment zone, you achieve the objective 8 victory points. So yeah, if you pull this card, don't bin it unless you really can't do it. But I'm going to now advise you on some of the units that you should be taking to score this objective. So the first one I'd go to is the Ophidian Destroyers. Now at the start of the edition, I kind of didn't even bother giving these guys a sniff. I was like, no, I didn't like them in 9th, I'm not going to like them in 10th. until you get to their Tunneling Horrors ability, and it's actually amazing. It's really good. So let's just go through it together just to make sure we're on the same page. So at the end of your opponent's turn, so not your turn, at the end of your opponent's turn, if they're not within engagement range, you can remove them from the battlefield, and then in your turn, which is coming up right now, in your movement phase, or your reinforcement step of your movement phase, you pop them back in, basically from deep strike, more than 9 inches away horizontally. Now, a few people in the comments have said, no, you can't re-deep strike. You actually can. If you go into the rules commentary, you'll find that if they've got the deep strike ability and they go into reserves, they can deep strike again back out of them, which makes this unit very effective for scoring points, because you can literally pop them out every single turn. It's not a once per use for the battle, you can do it every single turn, which is what I would do. Even if I didn't need to, I'd just pull them off anyway, and then I can bring them anywhere. And if I've got nowhere to really put them for points, just put them in your own deployment zone or somewhere safe, and then do it again. But yeah, that ability means your opponent has to screen off their backlines virtually all game. And if this comes up late game and your Ophidians they're still on the battlefield or in reserves, they're coming in for 8 victory points. So that's one way of doing it. Another way is the Transcendent Catan Shard with the transdimensional displacement ability. So when it advances, it can effectively do a jump and deep strike. Effectively, it's the same thing. So very similar to the Ophidian Destroyers, except this ability happens all in the same movement phase. So potentially you could be scoring primaries with this thing, whereas the Ophidian Destroyers, because they're coming off in your opponent's turn, they're missing the command phase. So there is a slight flaw to it, but the likelihood is they're not doing the primaries anyway. So you can do it with the Catan Shard. Again, you've got the Veil of Darkness Relic as an option if you've got that. I'm going to use this same screen here, the Overlord with the Lich Guard. That's just an easy one, but you've got other options. Scorbut Destroyers with the Scorbut Lord maybe. Immortals, whatever you've got that as a leader within that unit, that's got the Veil of Darkness. You've then got Tomb Blaze just because of their speed. You can, if you're sort of in the middle of the road in terms of where they are on the battlefield, you can probably move the 12, then advance and get onto it. And of course you've got to potentially remove models from it if there are some there. So the range attacks will assist with that. Maybe it's completely unguarded, because a lot of the missions now relate to the no man's land, capturing objectives, storming objectives, things like that. So sometimes the backlines are unguarded nowadays. So yeah, that's what I would do for capture enemy outpost for 8 victory points. The next one we've got is defend Stronghold. So it's kind of the flip reverse of capture enemy outpost. You've now got to kind of defend your own. To the end of your opponent's turn, or at the end of the battle, whichever comes first, if you control one objective marker in your own deployment zone, you score 3 victory points. It's not a lot, it's not a massive amount. Now you can't be doing this in the first battle round because that'd be too easy. You're already defending it with your whole army. So you can't do it in the first battle round, and you've literally got to redraw and reshuffle if you do get this in the first, if you're drawing cards. Now the only reason they've actually said that sentence is because some missions allow you to select another, like a third card. So that's the only reason they've put that, because of course you do actually select your secondaries, even if you are playing tactical, for the first round anyway. So what would I do to defend Stronghold? I mean, there's a lot of units that are so resilient for Necrons. There's the Necron Warriors. They can be pimped out with the Reanimator, the Technomancer, the Ghost Ark, the Resurrection Orbs. You know the crew by now. They've got loads of ways of coming back. The the Stratagem, Undying Legions. They literally don't die. Cryptus Rolls as well. So it's quite easy to defend the Stronghold. They've got good objective control as well of 2 per model. And there's 20 in a unit potentially. Yeah, they're really good at doing that. And very similarly, the Lich Guard, especially with the shields. If you're defending your own Stronghold, you don't really need the scythes. You may as well go with the shields. And the Technomancer preferably, so they've got a 5+4 no pain save on top of the 4+ invulnerable save. They'll defend that just fine. And a -1 to the wound roll if you've got a noble as well. Just don't forget your Cryptus Rolls because they are very key. You're going to have your shooter units as well that potentially could be just sat on a home objective. It could be your Locust Heavy Destroyers. It could be your Doomsday Ark, which won't want to move for the entire game because of the Devastating Wounds ability. Or it could just potentially, yeah, it would just be the Doomsday Ark really. There's not really other heavies that are going to sit there. Now, I wouldn't necessarily do it with Canoptic Scarabs because they've got no OC. Yes, they are half in the object control of enemy units, but they're quite squishy and they're only really screening. And it only takes 1 flying unit, for example, just to get in, and yeah, away you go. An Elder Bike is in, bang, done. So I wouldn't necessarily do it with Canoptic Scarabs unless you're screening off from Deep Strike and stuff. Next we've got Extend Battle Lines. I quite like this one. At the end of your turn, if you control one or more objective markers in your own deployment and also one in the no man's land, you will score 5 victory points. And there's a way of actually just scoring 2 if you've kind of messed it up a little bit, or it's a little bit of a late game thing. I would personally select this one first battle round, because I know I'm going to be getting onto an objective in my first turn. I'm pretty sure. With the units that I tend to select, I'm pretty much going to be getting at least one objective in the no man's land and keeping my own. So it's an easy 5 points in the first battle round. Personally, that's how I play it. Again, you've got your Necron warriors with the Ghost Arcs that can either do either of the objectives. They can either push forward if they've got the movement, or they stay on your home objective. You've got maybe Immortals with the Chronomancer for the move, shoot, move thing, and a Royal Warden, which will give the assault keyword. I mean, they do have the option of having Tesla anyway, so you might not necessarily need a Royal Warden, but the Chronomancer does give that extra speed. You've got Lich Guard. Again, it's very similar, in fact, to the one of the previous ones we did, isn't it? Defend Stronghold. If you're just getting onto an objective, it's quite easy. You can do it with pretty much any unit, really. But yeah, Tomb Blaze are probably one that I would be doing here, just to get the No Man's Land one. You need that speed of 12 inches. Sometimes you can do it with 9-inch movement units, but a lot of ours have gone down to 7 inches, so it's a little bit trickier. But Canoptic Wraiths, I believe, are 9, so they could potentially do it. They might need to advance. But yeah, other than that, it should be quite an easy one for Necron players. The next one, I like this one. I'll tell you why in a moment. So Investigate Signals. So in a shooting phase, you can select one or more units from your army that are not battle shocked and are eligible to shoot. And just before we carry on, every unit is eligible to shoot, even if they've not got ranged weapons. Just want to clarify that. It's also in the rules commentary. Now, of course, if you advance and you don't have the assault keyword, or you just advance in general with like a melee unit, then you're not eligible to shoot. Simple as that. So at the end of the turn, what is it? If each corner of the battlefield has a unit within 9 inches of it, they're going to be basically doing an action this edition. And for each corner you do, it's 2 victory points. Now, I quite like taking that in the first battle round because it's a guaranteed 4 points. You can just have 2 of your corners, which you're going to have. I've got something crawling on me. Get off me. How long has that been crawling on me? Damn it. Right, so you're definitely going to get 4 points. You've got the potential of getting 6. There are ways to do it. So what I would do for my 4 in my own deployment zone, I'd get 2 units of Scarabs because they can do the action. And then I'd get a unit of Tomb Blades to potentially do the furthest one. And it depends on the map size. So if you're just doing a standard map, then you're not going to get it. You're not going to get the 6. But if there's those diagonal maps, I don't know what you call them, there is potential because you've got the 9-inch scout move with Tomb Blades. You've then got the 12-inch movement. You've then got the advanced move. And I'm pretty sure if you get a 4 with your advanced move, you're going to be getting it wholly within with 3 models. And you can also score this, again I'm going to use this one, the Ophidian Destroyers. Now this isn't going to be your first turn. It's going to be again mid to late game. They can keep hopping on and off the battlefield, which is why they're so good. If you get this mid to late game, Investigate Signals, you've already got some units in your own deployment area, potentially, maybe you don't, depends on what you've got left. But the Ophidian Destroyers can pop in one of the corners, which won't be guarded because it's mid to late game. And that's at least 2 points from just the Ophidians alone. Hopefully you can get more than that. Next we've got No Prisoners. So No Prisoners, each unit that you destroy is 2 victory points to a maximum of 5. So if you do remove 3 units, you can max out with 5. Unfortunately it's not 6. And even if units are basically resurrected, you still get the victory points. So what can you do with No Prison? I've got one example for you because virtually everything can kill everything, right? Well, to a degree. To a degree. When you get your Psychomancer out, it's not really going to kill anything. But the one I like to use is the Locust Heavy Destroyers with the Exterminator weapons, alongside a Locust Lord that's leading the unit with the critical hits on a 5+. I think that's a massive killing unit, and I think it's so underrated this edition. On average, you're going to get 42 hits if you've got 3 of these in a unit within rapid fire, because they get 12 each, 12 shots each, that's 36. Sustained hits 1 on a 5+, that will give you 42 hits. And that's hits, not shots, hits. Strength 6, -1 AP, and no damage. No damage, and 1 damage, that would be ridiculous. And 1 damage. So they're very easily taking away units just like that. If you've got a couple of units of these, even crazier. But even the most tankiest of units, Terminators, they're going to take some damage from these. So I really like using these, and no prisoners is definitely something you can do with this kind of unit. But of course you can do it with other things. You've got your Catan, you've got the Doomsday Arc, even your Necron Warriors to a degree with lethal hits, maybe with the Plasmancer. There's virtually everything can do something. It all depends on what your opponent brings. Because if they've just got one Imperial Knight, then yeah, that's not as easy, is it? That's a whole different story. Next we come on to Overwhelming Force, which is when this is active, each time an enemy unit that started on an objective is destroyed, you score 3 victory points to a maximum of 5. So if you take away 2 units on an objective, then you're maxing out at 5 points. Now this has kind of got a similar vein to it as No Prisoners. You need to remove units, and the only way to remove units is having a bit of damage. So it could be the Locust Heavy Destroyers again, the Doomsday Arcs again, kind of the same things that we just spoke about for No Prisoners. You're going to be doing this for Overwhelming Force, but they've just got to be on an objective. That's the only real difference there, and you'll max it out at 5 points, whereas the other one, in fact the other one was 5 as well. But if you do just one unit with this Overwhelming Force, you do get 3 victory points, which is a bit of a bonus, I suppose. But other units that I wanted to mention just before we carry on, maybe you could take the Lich Guard with the War Scythes, the Strength 8 War Scythes, which are damage 2 now. Of course, you'd be taking Orokin with them for the Infant save, but they've got the damage. They've got the 2 attacks each, that's 20 attacks at Strength 8, minus, it's either -3 or -4, I can't remember off the top of my head, and damage 2. So it's doing a fair amount of work. I just wanted to give them a little mention in that section. Secure No Man's Land is next, so at the end of your turn, if you control 2 or more objectives in the No Man's Land, then you score this secondary for 5 victory points. This is another one that you potentially could use in the very first turn, alongside sort of extend battle lines, because if you've got your own objective and then you're going for one in the No Man's Land, you're virtually getting this, although in this one you need 2, I suppose, so maybe not. It depends on the mission, If you've got 2 that are quite close by, or there's one that you actually build your own objectives, then this one could be quite decent. Units that you would use, very similar to Extend Battle Lines. You've got your Warriors with the Ghost Arcs, you've got the Flayed ones with Infiltrate, potentially, from turn 1. Virtually anything's going to get into the No Man's Land and get onto an objective, not a problem. Tomb Blades again, Ophidian Destroyers again. Yeah, I'm kind of giving you the same sort of units now, because they're all very effective at scoring points. Moving on to Assassination, which is something a little bit different from scoring objectives. So if you're fixed, you're going to only score 4, and if you're using tactical, it's 5 points. If there are no characters, in fact, and all the characters have been destroyed, then you will still get your 5 points. You also get the points if the characters are still, they're resurrected. Like we've got our Necrons, Eternal Guardian. If they're resurrected, your opponent will still get the points. So you've got to bear that one in mind. And in fact, this one is a fixed mission now. This is the first fixed mission we've done in this video. And you can see from the bottom left of this card, it's got this little symbol which basically tells you it's a fixed mission. So you can't be selecting any of the fixed missions unless you are playing fixed mission at the start of the game. You can still draw them. There's nothing wrong with drawing them randomly throughout the game, but you can't select it at the start of the game. So, what we're doing with Assassination, there's a lot of things you can do. I mean, any character can do the Epic Challenge stratagem from the core rulebook because, well, it's thrown a spanner in the works, hasn't it? Because literally any character can do it. So just for 1 command point, a character can basically have the precision ability, which means they can literally allocate to characters within a unit. Even if there's a 20-man warrior blob, if someone uses Epic Challenge, maybe it's a Bloodthirster, maybe it's Abaddon the Spoiler, maybe it's, I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head, but you know the coup. If there's any leader that's pretty good in melee, they can Epic Challenge, kill our characters. Yes, we can get them back for a command point, but they're still going to score Assassination. Now, how are we doing that? We can do the exact same thing. We've got Catan shards that are characters, 2 in particular here, the Nightbringer, very killer unit, and the Transcendent Catan shard in this edition is an absolute must, in my opinion, for 2K games especially. The Deceiver, not so much. He still hits okay, but you may as well take one of these 2. And the Void Dragon is more equipped to take on vehicles. He's still good, he's still decent, but I would rather take one of these 2 for Assassination. You've also got the option of the Snipers with precision. You've got the Death Marks, the Hyperspace Hunters, and you've also got the Hexmark Destroyer. AP is lacking in that department, but he can be shooting quite a lot of times with that Overwatch ability and the multi-threat eliminator ability. So you've got potential there with the precision ability to take out characters. Another one I wanted to mention here is the Tomb Blades. Now, you might be thinking, well, what are the Tomb Blades going to do? Well, there are some characters with the lone operative ability, such as our Technomancer. He can have it, or the Hexmark Destroyer, in fact, that's another one. Now, if you're getting within 12 inches of that character, you can target them. So our Tomb Blades being as quick as they are, they can get within 12 inches. They can use their particle blasters, I think it's blasters. Use their particle blasters, D6 shots for each one. And it's got devastating wounds. I know it's only 1 damage each, but you can start targeting these lone characters. Don't need precision, you don't need epic challenge, you don't need none of that. You can just start targeting, so it's good. Okay, on to behind enemy lines. We've got another fixed one, of course. They're all fixed from now on. In fact, at the end of the turn, if 2 or more units from your army are wholly within your opponent's scoring zone, you're going to be scoring 4 victory points. This won't include aircrafts, unfortunately. Not that many people are playing with aircrafts at the moment. And if at the end of the turn only one of your models is wholly within your opponent's deployment zone, you get 2 VP instead of 4. Fine, cool. If you are using tactical, in fact, it says at the bottom, then this secondary will give you an extra VP to a maximum of 5. Shift over because my bum is aching. So how are we scoring behind enemy lines? What are we doing? Got a couple of deep strike, well, there's plenty of deep strike units that we've got. We've got Triumph Praetorians. I personally don't like them, but some of you do. And they've got deep strike now, so that's why I've kind of mentioned them here. You can pop in maybe turn 3. Ophidian Destroyers can do it turn 3, well, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, because they've got that Tunneling Horrors ability. Tomb Blades, again, because of their speed, they're going to be able to get there. And the Transcendent Catan Shard, of course, with that dimensional advance move. You can also just pop in just to score and then pop out again on your next turn. Other units with Deep Strike, we've just mentioned them, the Hyperspace Hunters of Deathmarks and Hexmark Destroyer. Hexmark, in fact, is a really good one because it's so small in terms of its base. It's one model. It can pop in. Yes, it probably does die, but if you're willing to sacrifice however many points it is, then is it 70 or 80? Check later. But whatever it is, if you're willing to sacrifice that, or at least distract your enemy units from the rest of your army while scoring at the same time, then it's an option. It's an option. And finally, you've got the Veil of Darkness as well. Veil of Darkness Relic. No, it's not a relic, it's an enhancement. You've got that option as well with whatever unit's carrying it. On to Bring It Down next. I'm not really good at this one, to be honest with you, because I don't tend to take these kind of units right now. But it's if you're killing monsters and vehicles, you get 2 victory points and an additional 1 for each of the bullet points down below. So if you've got 10 wounds, you're going to get 3 victory points because you get 2 plus the 1. 15 will give you another 1 on top of that, and 20 wounds plus will give you another 1 of those. So that will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you get 5 points. And again, if they're resurrected, you still score the points. Da-di-da-di-da. So our big hitters, the Doomsday Ark, of course, that's one of them with devastating wounds. It's heavy. Potentially using the enhancement for the +1 to the hip thing. What's it called now? My brain's gone. Not the Semternal Weave, that's the Feel No Pain save. What is it called? Sovereign Coronal, that's the one. I knew it was in there somewhere, jiggling around. You've also got the Locust Heavy Destroyers with the Gorse Destructors, the damage 6 weapons. They're also heavy and they've got 48-inch range now, so they can do stuff like Bring It Down. You've got the Monolith with the Death Rays, that can do some work. You've got all 3 of the Catans. I say 3, not 4, because the Deceiver's just not really worthy. But you definitely will be looking at the Void Dragon if you're talking about vehicles. And I wanted to throw in the Silent King here. He's got the 2 Annihilation Beams and also all of his other ranged weapons and tricks that he's got. Potentially he can take down a monster or vehicle by himself. Well, he should be able to, really. It's the Silent King, he's just a bit overpriced for what he can actually do. So yeah, lots of ways to take down monsters and vehicles, and that's just some of them. On to Cleanse next, another fixed one. So in your shooting phase, you can select 1 or more units from your army that are not battle shocked and eligible to shoot. Until the end of the turn, they're not eligible to shoot and declare a charge. I don't know why they write that to us, but anyway. At the end of the turn, each objective marker that is not within in your deployment zone that you control, that has one of these units within range of it, so they're effectively doing an action on this one. You're going to be scoring, where is the scoring? 1 objective marker gives you 2 VP if you're using fixed, or 3 VP if you're doing tactical. And if you do 2 or more objectives, it's going to be 4 victory points if you're fixed and 5 if you're tactical. So it is a maximum of 5, even though it does say for every objective marker that you do, but then it later says 2 or more. A bit strange, but whatever. So you can max out on 5 if you're playing tactical, which you probably should be at this moment. So I would throw away very cheap units that aren't doing much, especially at range. So you've got your Canoptic Scarabs. They can do these kind of actions, especially a unit of 3. Very easy just to hide and get into that position and do that action, not a problem. I also want to throw in the Canoptic Reanimator here because it's, other than doing its reanimation beam thing, it's not doing much else. You do have ranged weapons, but they're not that great. So you may as well just do an action if this is the only thing that can do an action. You've got the lone operatives such as your Technomancer or your Hexamart Destroyer. They can potentially do stuff like that. Or your melee units that aren't really going anywhere, such as your Lich Guard with the shields. They could just do the action as well. So there's some options for you for cleanse. On to deploy Teleport Homers next. It's kind of very similar to Behind Enemy Lines in a way. So in your shooting phase, you're doing an action with a non-battle shot unit that can shoot. They're not going to be able to shoot or declare a charge. And at the end of the turn, if the unit is within your opponent's deployment zone or within 6 inches of the centre of the battlefield, you can deploy Teleport Homer in that location. And then you score, if you're doing it in the centre of the battlefield, it's 2 VP, or 3 if you're doing tactical. And if you're doing it in your opponent's deployment zone, which is where you should be aiming for, you're going to be scoring 4 on fixed or 5 on tactical. Again, you're going for 5 here, you should be playing tactical at this moment. So very similar to Behind Enemy Lines, you need to get into your opponent's deployment zone. And these are the units that you've got. So a Veil of Darkness could be virtually any unit that's being led, or just a character on its own. Up to you. It could be a Hexamart Destroyer, which I know it is a character, but you don't need to put the Veil on it because it's got Deep Strike. So why would you put the Veil? You can just do it itself. That one's a very good one, in fact, because it's so easy for the Hexamart to sneak into an enemy deployment zone. They're not going to be able to screen off every single inch unless they've got a lot of models, a horde unit, a horde army. You've got the Tomb Blades again because they're quick, they can get there. And you've got the Deep Strike options of the Praetorians and the Ophidian Destroyers, which can keep coming back and back and back and back. Canoptic Scarabs are a potential one. They're quick-ish. They're quick-ish. They're not as quick as they used to be, but they're quick-ish. It depends on when you pull this card. If you're pulling it early game, then don't really go for the Canoptic Scarabs. You may as well go for a Deep Strike option. But if it's mid to late game and they're working their way up the battlefield, then they could be the ones to do it. Engage on all fronts is another one. That's from the old edition, isn't it, really? You're just getting into the 4 table quarters and 3 inches away from any other table quarter with that unit. I'm just checking if it's anything to do with Holy. Yep, it's Holy within 3. And you can score 4 victory points if you've got the qualifying units, and 2 if you've only got 3 quarters. So 4 if you've got 4 quarters, 2 if you've got 2 quarters, and you can't be battle shocked with any of the units. If you're using tactical, then you're going to gain an extra VP, so to a maximum of 5 victory points. So what we're doing with Engage, virtually everything really. I mean, you've got the Scarabs again. May as well bring them straight back in on the screen here. They can get to any quarter realistically. Again, you've got the Ophidian Destroyers. Again, you've got the Tomb Blades. I may as well just keep them on the screen because they just keep popping up, these units. You can see a theme here, can't you? Tomb Blades, Ophidian Destroyers, Scarabs. Those kind of units can do almost everything we've got. But yeah, as long as you're getting into the quarters, your own quarters are going to be fairly easy to do. Could be just Lich Guard, Ghost Arcs, whatever, right? Any of your models can do that. You're more focusing on the 2 furthest quarters from your deployment zone and how you're going to get them, and likelihood is you're using Deep Strike. Storm Hostile Objective is the next one. At the end of the turn, if either of the below conditions are satisfied, you're going to score 4 victory points if you're fixed and 5 if you're tactical. So you need to control 1 or more objective markers that were controlled by your opponent at the start of the turn, or your opponent did not control any objective markers and then you control 1 or more. The likelihood is your opponent controls at least 1, but there are situations when they don't. So you could get lucky with this and your opponent doesn't control any, and you just have to get 1 model onto an objective with OC1, and there you have it, you've got your points. But the likelihood is you're going to need to storm a hostile objective and remove a unit from an objective. Or you don't have to actually remove them, you just need to take control of it. So Necron Warriors are probably a good one, especially if you've got them into the no man's land at this stage of pulling the card. All of them are OC2, they don't die. Very easy just to squeeze them into an objective. Even if you lose models on Overwatch, you can bring them back and bring them onto the objective. So pull from the back, put at the front. Very easily taken over an objective with Warriors. It could also be Lich Guard, it could also be I mean, we should have this one down quite comfortably, to be honest with you. If I was actually playing fixed, this may be one of the ones that I actually took. It might be this one, but at this moment I'm not really playing fixed. So I believe that is all of the objectives. So I just wanted to mention the key units for you. So take this list, and I would look at this and try and get as many of these units into your list as possible. So you got warriors, flayed ones, Ophidian destroyers I think are a key unit, you know. Lich Guard, Locust heavy destroyers are doing a bit of work. Canoptic Scab Swarm seem to be doing quite a lot of work, even though they've lost their use, or they've changed their role. Tomb Blades were definitely in most of those secondaries, and a Hexmark Destroyer also did quite a lot of them. And key, not so much key, but I'll put useful options. You've got the Transcendent Catan Shard. It can almost do everything, but it's just a bit too expensive to be doing behind enemy lines and things like that, or deploy Teleport Homer. It's a little bit too pricey to be doing that. The Monolith can do stuff because of the sheer size, and it's got a bit of punch as well as the damage output. Immortals, if you prefer Immortals over Lich Guard and Warriors, you can use Immortals, not a problem, just transfer them in. Canoptic Wraiths, if you need a little bit of resiliency as well as punch and speed, you got the Wraiths. And Triumph Praetorians, which I don't really tend to use, but they've got deep strike, so it gives them a bit of utility. So there you have it, guys. You'll have to help me out if I've missed anything. Put it down in the comments below if I've missed any units that you would potentially use for any of these secondaries, and give your reasons to why. I hope this has been useful to you and informative. And remember, there will be timestamps down below so you can return and have a look at this video just to see how you're getting on. But yeah, guys, that is it from me today. Thank you all for watching. See you in the next one.